All right, chapter 39, verse 1. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, now this is an Egyptian title, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the butchers, or these guys would slaughter you, which translates bodyguard. He bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him down there. Okay, and by the way, remember Egypt's double oppression, double slavery. Pharaoh is the house. The word for a captain and the bodyguard. The word for a captain is actually the same word for eunuch. Okay, so we can't tell if it's just a title because of who this man is, or if it is in fact that reality. It would explain a lot about his wife, though, wouldn't it? All right. Now, Yahweh was with Joseph. So he was a successful man. He was with him in strength, successful strength. And he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. Now his master saw that Yahweh was with him, and how Yahweh caused all that he did to prosper in his hand. Now this is incredible to me. Now and then you'll run across a man or a woman who, because of their watching your life, can see that God has done something in you. Now notice he sees it. Doesn't mean anybody else sees it, but this man sees this prosperity that this guy does, right? That whatever he's doing, he seems to prosper in it. And he actually linked it together with Yahweh, with the God that Joseph would have been familiar with. So, and by the way, he says everything in his hand. You'll notice that it is not uncommon for God to work through the hand of his people, right? Through your hand, through my hand, through anybody's hand here. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant. And he made him overseer of his household, and all that he owned he put in his charge. And now notice, he's been exalted greatly. This is a powerful man, a man who has direct access to the Pharaoh, as we'll see here in a moment. It came about that from the time he made him overseer in his house over all that he owned, that Yahweh blessed the Egyptian house on account of Joseph. Now you'll notice, Joseph is being blessed in one way. He's getting more responsibilities, but the man who's really being blessed is this official here because of Joseph. Okay? When God sent Israel into Babylon, he said, build houses, plant crops, and he said, and pray for these people that you're Babylonians. Maybe that's part of the reason why you're there, right? To pray for these guys, right? On account of Joseph. Thus, Yahweh was blessing his blessing was upon all that he owned in his house and his field. And he left everything. This is the word, he abandoned everything that he owned in Joseph's charge. And with him, he did not concern himself with anything except what food he would eat. Okay? Now Joseph was a handsome in form and in appearance. How would you like the greatest decision every day is what you're going to dine on? I mean, that would be your work for the day and you're done, right? Write out a menu, call it good, and that's your day. Well, if you've got somebody like Joseph running your accounts, you can do that. Okay? Because he's trustworthy and everything is going to be perfect for him. By the way, in verse 6, it literally says he did not know anything. Okay? He had no idea what's going on with his real estate and his properties and his ranch and all that stuff. He's just leaving that in Joseph's hand. That's quite a responsibility. Okay? Now, Joseph is very handsome. Good-looking guy, right? It came about after those events, his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph and said, come lie with me. Quite the offer. This is the reason I'm looking at this gal and saying, if her husband is in fact a eunuch, why would she be married to him? Well, as an Egyptian official, she would be what we would call today eye candy, that sort of thing, a girl on your arm who's quite lovely. And so she may have had a relationship with her husband and maybe not. And Joseph refused, and he said to his master's wife, behold, with me, there my master does not concern himself with anything in this house, and he's put everything he owns in my charge. There's no one greater in this house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great evil and sin against God? Now notice, Joseph's response is one of gratitude. My goodness, this guy's blessed me. How can I repay him that way? Why would I do that? it would be wrong in the eyes of God. It would be ingratitude towards him and ingratitude towards God. After all, he is a slave. Okay? Verse 10, it came about, she spoke to him day after day, that he did not listen to her to lie beside her and be with her. Now, it happened one day, he went into the house to do his work, and none of the men of the household was there inside. So she caught him by his garments, and this is a real aggressive term here, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and went outside. Now we're left to our imagination here, but when she seized him or grabbed hold of him, it literally means to manipulate, to overlay. So she was on top of him, I do not know. But and in those days, in a work job, he may be wearing just nothing but a little outfit that comes down to about here. I mean, just something very simple, a little wrap. She grabs that, pulls, jumps on him, whatever she's doing here, and he is having none of this. Okay. By the way, what do you do when you're in a position like this? He's got tremendous power and exaltation. My guess is she's quite a lovely woman. Okay, and he's in a real catch-22 here. If he does or if he doesn't. When she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and had fled outside, she called to the men of the household. She said to them, see, he has brought in a Hebrew to us to make sport of us. He came in to lie with me, and so I screamed. Now, let me show you something here. There's nobody in the house. If she tells nobody, no one will know. But we're beyond that now, aren't we? She's going to take revenge on him for... I mean, you're a lowly slave. My husband bought you. How dare you turn me down? Now, and there may be a play on words here. Remember, Eber is Hebrew, and it means to cross over, kind of thing. Is she playing off of his name? He brought in this guy who's crossed over. He's crossed over the boundary. He's gone too far. And I had to actually just scream to save myself. It came about when he heard that I raised up my voice and I screamed, that he left his garment beside me and he fled. He went outside. What a lying woman. Hey. By the way, would women do this today? Oh, yes. I remember their first season. It seems like that everybody that was getting divorced, their husbands were being accused of child molestation. Every one of them. It's like, wait a minute, all of them? You're good and this guy's 0 for nothing? What is this? Something's not right. Some of these gentlemen I know think, this can't be right. So she left the garment beside her until her master came home. Then she spoke to him with these words, that Hebrew slave who went too far, whom you brought to us, came into me to make sport of me. To make sport of me is the word Isaac, by the way. Make laughter of me, to make a joke out of me, right? Now, I don't know what he's thinking as he's hearing these words. But you'll notice she just blamed him, didn't she? You brought that guy in here. I think. It happened, I raised my voice, I screamed, and that he left his garment beside me and fled outside. Now it came about when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spoke to him, this is what your slave did to me, that his anger burned. Now they put a period right there, and we can't tell who his anger has burned against. Don't assume anything yet, okay? If you are an official of the bodyguards of the Pharaoh, your job is to kill men if they come near, right? And this guy's a slave. If you believe that this man was trying to violate your wife, what would you do to him? Is there any question? Okay, he'd be deader than a doornail, wouldn't he? So Joseph's master took him and put him into the jail. Now this is going to be the royal jail, not a regular prison that people go to. This is a place where you're treated well. Okay? At the place where the king's prisoners were confined. Now notice, the king, the Pharaoh, probably does not know that Joseph is in there. And he was there in the jail. Do you know who runs this prison? Potiphar. The same guy who's married to her. Okay? So when it says there was heat in his nose, I think he was angry with her. Because I think he knows her. And so he puts Joseph not in some prison for lowlifes and slaves, but in a place that's the royalty, I think. It would be like going to federal prison. Have you seen America's federal prison? They live better than we do. They're going for walks, they dine, they take their showers, watch TV. I mean, it's just kind of thing. Now, Yahweh was with Joseph, and he extended kindness to him, gave him favor in the sight of the chief jailer. And the chief jailer committed to Joseph's charge all the prisoners who were in the jail, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. So he goes from running this guy's estate to running the prison. A very nice prison, okay, as it were. Now the chief jailer did not supervise anything under Joseph's charge, because Yahweh was with him, and whatever he did, Yahweh made him to prosper. This guy's going to be in charge no matter where he's going. Okay? Now, because you understand, this is what Joseph is being prepared for. Not the way his daddy was going to do it, but the way God's going to do it. Okay? And again, if this guy really believed his wife, he would have put him to death. He would not put him in a place for the officials of the king, who the king got his nose out of joint at, right? And he's got tremendous power in this prison. He's treated like a royal prisoner, as it were. All right? Verse 1. Then it came about after these things that the cupbearer, literally the drink master, or the guy who does everything, and the baker, this is literally like the wheat man. He's in charge of certain measurements. For the king of Egypt, they offended their Lord. Literally, they sinned against their Lord, is what it says. The king of Egypt. Now, one of these guys has done something really wrong. And one of them was just probably in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, Pharaoh was furious with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. He put them in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard. Who's that? That is Joseph's master. In the jail. Some place where Joseph was, the same place where he was imprisoned. The captain of the bodyguard put Joseph in charge of them, and he took care of them, and they were confined for some time. This is called the house of the captain of the guard. It's also called his master's house. That is Joseph's master's house. Okay, and later on it'll be called a dungeon. Okay. Now, the cupbearer and the baker for the king of Egypt, who were confined in jail, they both had a dream the same night. Each man with his own dream, and each dream with its own interpretation. When Joseph came to them in the morning and observed them, behold, they were dejected. Deject is okay, I guess. It's literally the Hebrew word is frustrated, because it means to boil, as in you're upset, you're angry because you can't figure this out. So that's frustration, right? Rather than dejection. He asked Pharaoh's officials who were with him in confinement in his master's house, "Why are your faces so bad today?" Okay? And again, when you're frustrated, it comes out in your face and people can see, and that's what he's seeing. Okay, so they said to him, "We have had a dream, and nobody is here to open it." Interpretation is the idea, but literally the Hebrew we can't open it. Joseph said to them, "Well, do not interpretations belong to God?" Do you remember Daniel with Nebuchadnezzar? Same thing. There's a God in heaven. Which tells you something. When you and I have dreams, God knows what dreams mean. Us is too much pizza and hot sauce last night, kind of thing, and now you're having bad dreams, kind of thing, or you're eating too much too late at night, that sort of thing. And but interpretations of this type, these are the dreams like God would give to a prophet or something like that. It belongs to him. By the way, notice what's happening here. When he was young, his dad gave him a coat that gave him exaltation in that family, and he was a spoiled brat and made a fool of himself. Till his brothers were, as far as we're concerned, will kill you. I mean, they're good to do that, right? Now he goes to this man, and this man has an estate. Now he's running this man's estate, But he's doing so by grace, and you can see the change in his heart. He's not a braggart and a big mouth anymore. He's just thankful that as a slave, things are pretty good for him. Okay. Now, when he goes to the prison, this is a bit more formal. He's running a business here, kind of thing. And shortly, he's going to be standing before the Pharaoh, running the known world at that time. Okay. God is preparing him. God prepared Moses to lead his people by putting 40 years with sheep. How did God prepare David? Same thing, with sheep. He's out there all by himself, and you'll notice he tangled with a bear. He says he's talking about when he tangled with a lion. He didn't seek out his daddy. I think he was a pretty brave young man, kind of thing. Same way with Joseph. Joseph is growing up in a hurry, and he goes a little bit higher and a little bit higher, and next thing you know, he's going to be quite the guy here. Interpretations belong to God. Tell it to me. Verse 9, the chief cupbearer told his dream to Joseph, said to him, in my dream there was a vine in front of me, in front of my face. On the vine, by the way, this is he's going to use a term that talks about these brand new sprouts. 3 new sprouts, 3 different days, right? And on the vine that there were these branches. And as it was budding, its blossoms came out, and its clusters produced ripe grapes. Okay? This word for blossom also translates hawk. How do you like that? But it does so in this way. It means to grow really fast, and hawks are known for their speed, right? And producing is the word for boiling. So in his dream, this stuff just comes out really fast, right? That's all he's saying, that it happened very, very fast. Now Pharaoh's cup was in my hand. So I took the grapes and I squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and then I put the cup into Pharaoh's cup-shaped hand. That is, when he handed the cup to Pharaoh, he just told you that Pharaoh received it like this. He didn't grab it this way, he grabbed it this way. Okay? By the way, just as an aside, when he says, I squeezed the grapes into Pharaoh's cup, how fresh is Pharaoh's grape juice? It's on the spot. Fresh squeeze is probably squeezed right there where the Pharaoh is, right? Just crush those things into that grape. That's pretty fresh, right? This word crushed, I was reading through the Septuagint, which is in 200 BC, when the Jews translated Hebrew into Greek. When I came to this word, when I crushed the grapes, he uses the word, what we translate tribulation. And it's just crushing. Same word for those grapes, grab them and just crush them. You can see, like in Revelation, in the end time, you see what God's doing. He's grabbing the whole planet and squeezing it. This is really bad. And the grapes, some of the blood of the grapes, that's the term in the Old Testament. It's like blood, kind of thing. So Jesus uses grape juice and said, "This is my blood," because this is what grape juice is. It's the blood of the grape. Okay? But anyway, first time that whole word, that whole idea of the tribulation came into context in my mind. I thought, that's exactly what he's doing here, crushing. Joseph said to him, "This is the opening of it. The 3 branches, these are 3 days." Things come out fresh, right? "Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head, restore you to your office, and you will put Pharaoh's cup into his cup-shaped hand, according to your former custom, when you were his cupbearer." So what is his dream? Well, I saw myself giving, again, the Pharaoh's cup to Pharaoh. You'll be back there in 3 days. Only keep me in mind when it goes well with you. And please do me a kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh and get me out of this house. I was, in fact, kidnapped, literally, stolen. I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews. Even here, I've done nothing that they should have put me in this dungeon. Now, when the chief baker saw that he had interpreted favorably, okay, he said to Joseph, "I also saw in my dream. And behold, there were 3 baskets of white bread on my head." Now, the word for baskets is the term for vines that have been woven together. Okay, and they were on my head. And in the top basket, there were some of all sorts of baked food for Pharaoh and the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. Now let me ask you something. If you're the baker for the Pharaoh, and you're going to haul fresh baked bread in there, how fresh is it if the birds have been chewing on it? What would you do with bread if you saw the bunch of birds on it, and this is for the Pharaoh? Okay, this is waste bread, trash bread. This is no good bread for a Pharaoh. And Joseph answered and said, this is the interpretation, the opening of this. The 3 baskets, those are 3 days. And again, if that were for Pharaoh, the birds would not be eating on it. Within 3 more days, Pharaoh will lift up your head from you and will hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat your flesh off of you. You're not going back. The loaves of bread are defiled. You've been doing something very wrong. Thus it came about on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday. Can you think of another birthday in the New Testament? There's another birthday. See, the Bible and birthdays, they don't go very well. People die. Herod kills John the Baptist and takes off his head. This guy gets hung by his head, right? They made a feast for all of his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief cupbearer. He restores him, and the head of the chief baker among his servants. Okay, he restored the chief cupbearer and to his office, and he put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. We've got ancient documents where the pharaohs would restore different people, but evidently whatever the baker did was not a good thing. He was upset. Okay, he restored one, he hung the other. Now he hanged the chief baker just as Joseph interpreted to them. Yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Now, in defense of this guy, I think he is so happy to get back to where he was, right? Especially one guy was hauled out and hanged, and he got put back. And you would think that he might remember this, because this is a pretty miraculous thing. But nonetheless, he forgot. Now, the Rosetta Stone, if you've heard of that, the Rosetta Stone, that was discovered in AD 1799. It records the custom of the Pharaoh releasing prisoners, etc. at that time. Now, verse 1. Now it happened at the end of 2 full years. Joseph's been in prison for 2 years. I think I'm going to probably die here, etc. Okay. That Pharaoh had a dream. And behold, he was standing by the Nile. And lo, from the Nile there came up 7 cows, literally bright and fat. And they grazed in the marsh grass. So they come up out of the Nile, but they're grazing down in the Nile itself. Okay, come up out of it, just literally out of the water, as it were, and come over to the edge, and they're grazing there, and they're fat. 7 of them. Then behold, 7 other cows came up after them from the Nile. They were ugly and gaunt. These are really thin. Okay, you ever seen a cow or a horse that is so skinny you can see all the bones, right? Okay. And the word flesh is in here. They were fat of flesh, or they were literally skinny of flesh. So the idea is you can see their bones here. Okay, and they're ugly looking things. And they stood by the other cows on the bank of the Nile. Okay? Literally 7 cows, bright and fat of flesh, feeding among the reeds. And the ugly and gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek and fat cows. Now, when do cows eat each other? Now, whatever this is, the blessing and the cursing are similar, okay? And the cursing is going to eat up the blessing. That's the idea here. And then Pharaoh awoke. He fell asleep. He dreamed a second time. Behold, 7 ears of grain came up on one single stalk, fat and good. Incredible, okay? Now, you get the idea. In the ancient world, the number 7 had more meanings than just a number, right? The Easterners think these mindsets in pictures. The idea, a stalk coming up, they couldn't hold any more fruit on it than what it's got on here, okay? And behold, 7 ears of wheat is the idea. 7 ears thin and scorched by the east wind. sprouted up after them. And he just told you what's coming. A heat wave. The thin ears swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears. And then Pharaoh awoke, and behold, wow, it was a dream. It came about in the morning that his spirit was troubled. He is, in fact, upset by not being able to figure this stuff out. Okay. By the way, the word trouble, his spirit is troubled. It means to either hit you, strike you, or just do that to you. Poke you. Okay? And this is hitting him and poking him. So he called for the Magi, the magicians of Egypt, and its wise men. Okay. And the magician, these are Pharaoh's advisors, this is like Nebuchadnezzar's advisor. These are men of dreams, horoscopes. You know how long the horoscope's been around? A long time. And they use these magical lines and circles, etc. And, I was over at Barnes & Noble one time, and I saw a publication of one of these ancient books of Egyptian dreams. And so I just browsed through it, and all they've done is taken they meet with the king pretty regularly, and they would write down his dreams and then watch what happened in his life. And if you have that dream, this part of that dream, it means this part means this, and they put things together that way. Kind of silly kind of thing. It's like these people that, you call them and they can tell you all about your future. Well, if they know I want to call them, why don't they call me? Yeah? And again, I remember this is a true story. A guy, old professor, blind in one eye, and this story, he was going to this grand opening at this grocery store out front. They had somebody reading your palms. And so he just walked up there and looked at the crowd and looked at her and said, "Lady, where are the Kleenexes?" And she paid him no attention. Finally, he got louder. "Where are the Kleenexes?" She finally yelled out, "I don't know. I don't work here. So how do you know everything about everybody's future, but you don't even know where the Kleenexes are?" You understand his point? You don't know so much. This is just silly here. All right, so he calls the magician and the wise men. These are supposed to be people who are skilled at whatever you're dealing with. He told them the dream. Pharaoh told them the dream, and there was no one who could interpret them to Pharaoh. Now, in Nebuchadnezzar, he said, first you're going to tell me what the dream was. Because if you can't tell me what the dream was, you can't tell me what it means. And if you don't, I'm going to kill you all. Okay? Just slight bit of pressure there. Okay. By the way, isn't that what God did as well? If you're a prophet, if you make one missed call, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to have you put to death. Verse 9. Now the chief cupbearer spoke to Pharaoh, saying, "I would make mention today of my own sin." Pharaoh was furious with it. By the way, he could mean either that he'd done formerly or the sin of neglecting Joseph, what he'd done. Pharaoh was furious with his servant, and he put me in confinement in the house of the captain of the bodyguard, Potiphar, both me and the chief baker. We had a dream on the same night, he and I. Each of us dreamed according to the interpretation of his own dream. Now there was a Hebrew youth that was with us there, a servant of the captain of the bodyguard. And we related them to him, and he interpreted our dreams for us. To each one he interpreted according to his own dream. And it came about that just as he had interpreted for us, so it happened. He restored me in my office, but he hanged him. Now this is probably catching the attention of the Pharaoh. Okay. Verse 14, now Pharaoh sent, and he called for Joseph. They hurriedly brought him out of the dungeon, and when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes, he was brought to Pharaoh. Now, shaving, if you've seen these ancient pictures, they stand before Pharaoh, they are shaved, right? And he's got some nice duds put on him because of where he's going. And back in those days, typically there'd be men who, when you come in, here's how you'll behave yourself, here's how you approach the king, here's how you depart. And that stuff is laid out for you. Now Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream, but no one can interpret it. And I have heard it said about you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Now Joseph then answered Pharaoh, saying, it is not in me. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Now, isn't this exactly what Daniel told? Among men, this is not here, that's for sure, but there is with God. And Pharaoh's own people said, so, to tell you the dream and the interpretation, to tell you the dream that we never heard of, only that lies with the gods, and there's no such man on earth. But there was a man on earth who depended upon God, and that's how it was done. It's not me. God will give the Pharaoh a favorable answer. So Pharaoh spoke to Joseph. In my dream, behold, I was standing on the bank of the Nile. Behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile. Now, whatever the problem is they're looking at, it is directly related to the Nile, isn't it? Behold, 7 cows. By the way, you understand what he's doing. The Nile is, do you know how the Nile works? Every year it comes up and overflows its banks. And when it overflows its banks, it's full of silt and all kinds of good stuff, right? And it overflows into the fields. It's been doing that for thousands of years, and that's how they do that. That's why Egypt was the breadbasket of the Roman Empire. All those crops, it was incredible, right? So the judgment that you have here is the Nile is going to put forth 7 cows fat. And then the Nile is going to put 7 more cows, which aren't. Okay, so both of this comes out of the Nile. It all relates to the Nile and the heat, right? This heat wave that's coming. And behold, 7 cows, fat and sleek, came up out of the Nile. The Nile produces these crops, and they grazed in the marsh grass. And lo, 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and gaunt, such as I have never seen for ugliness in the land of Egypt. This was bad, but it also came out of the Nile. And the lean and ugly cows ate up the first 7 fat cows. And when they had devoured them, it could not be known that they had devoured them, for they were just as ugly as before. And then I woke up. That's pretty bad. The fat cows were eaten, and it made no effect. Things were still bad. Verse 22. I also saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears of wheat, is the idea here, full and good, came upon a single stalk. So each stalk of wheat or whatever is out in their fields, it just is loaded for bear when it produces these crops. Now, so lo, 7 ears, withered, thin, and scorched. See the heat? By the east wind sprouted up after them. And again, these would also be crops watered from the Nile. Everything focuses on the Nile. Okay, so when we have this man-made lake and you have Joseph's canal, my guess is Joseph went out there and built that thing out there to store some water. Okay, now the thin ears swallowed the 7 good ears. And then I told it to the magicians, and there was nobody who could explain it to me. Now Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. And God has told to Pharaoh what he's about to do. Okay? And you remember in the scriptures, you say something twice. If I want to say red, I say Adam. If I want to say dark red, I say Adam Dam. That's just saying Adam twice, and it's dark red. Okay? Or twice sifted as fine flour. It's just you do it twice, it gets fine. Verily, verily, truly, truly, amen, amen, to quote Jesus. 3 times emphasis, whoa, whoa, whoa. Anyway, these are one and the same. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are one and the same. And the 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. Now notice, this famine is coming. It comes because of the Nile, and it comes because there's intense heat. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown the Pharaoh what he's about to do. Now you'll notice Joseph, originally he had some dreams about himself and his brothers. But now he's interpreting dreams of others, men who don't know the Lord. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all of the land of Egypt. Where's it coming from? It's coming up out of the Nile, what the Nile is going to produce for crops. After them, 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance is going to be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. It is going to be horrible, okay? Literally, it will ravage the land, or literally it will end it. It will complete it, okay? So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of the subsequent famine. It will be very severe. Now, the word severe is the Hebrew word glory. Remember, glory means heavy, important, severe. It's going to be a heavy famine. Now, as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it to pass. Now, you notice what he's saying. God did this twice. This is actually about to happen. This is going to happen right away. But now let Pharaoh look for a man of understanding or discernment. Literally, it's the word to build or to put things together. There's a guy out there who knows how to put this together, and he will be wise. He'll be skilled in what he needs to be doing. Set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land. Let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt, okay, and for the 7 years of abundance, okay. Then let them gather all the food of the good years that are coming, and store up the grain for the food in the cities under Pharaoh's hand, and let them guard it. Why are you guarding it? Because famine is coming, and you've got to be careful here, okay? Now, for 70 years, at 20%, he'll have 140%, which means we're going to drop down to measuring out food. And the only time you measure out food by weight is when there's famine. Okay? Let the food become as a reserve for this land for 7 years of famine will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish during the famine. Now, we're not going to get to this, but towards the end, the people, literally, they don't have any way to get food, and so they start selling their land, and they sell their crops, they sell their houses, and finally they sell themselves to Pharaoh. So that by the time we get to the book of Exodus, who's a slave? Every last woman and child. Pharaoh's God, you understand? He's the most powerful man on earth. He owns everybody, kind of thing. And they sold themselves for food. It's a horrible thing. Do you know who did not sell themselves for food? The Israelites. They were given land free of charge to be taken care of because of Joseph. So they were exempt from what happened. Now, the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. And again, when he says his servants, these are the men who are his cabinet, making decisions for the government. Then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this in whom is a divine spirit?" He just told him, find somebody who knows what to do about it, and then he told him what to do. Those are credentials, aren't they? He just told him, here's what you need to do. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has informed you of all of this, there's no one so discerning as wise as you are. You just lay this thing out. Let's get her done. You shall be over my house." His house is his administration, right? Like the house of David running the kingdom. Okay? The house of Caesar's household says hello. Right? "You shall be over my house, and according to your mouth, all my people will do homage." Okay, let me tell you what he says. Literally, according to your mouth, all my people will kiss. That's what he says. That's all it says. Okay. When Joseph speaks, everybody is going to show adoration and kiss up to whatever he says on pain of death. Okay, get the idea? This is what's about to happen. It's serious, and we've got no time for anybody's messing a hand with it, right? "Only in the throne will I be greater than you." Now, I find that fascinating. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I've set you over all the land of Egypt." How powerful is Joseph now? My goodness. By the way, when the people come and sell themselves to Pharaoh, Joseph does not sell himself. He's in charge of this program. And it's actually his idea. Okay? Now, you'll notice Joseph is second to the Pharaoh. Moses in his day was second to the Pharaoh. Daniel became second to Nebuchadnezzar, and later on to Belshazzar. He becomes the third with Belshazzar because Nabonidus was ruling Babylon, but Nabonidus decided he didn't want to rule, so he went on this oasis town, and he'd already been captured. And so Belshazzar, he's the number 2 guy, and he says, you'll be third in the kingdom, but he's next to the king as well. Mordecai is second to Ahasuerus, king of Persia. Remember, Ahasuerus gives him the signet ring, puts him in charge, okay? My goodness. Zerubbabel was the governor when they came back in Ezra and Nehemiah to restore the city. And in Haggai, he says, in that day, he's a type of the Messiah. He says, Zerubbabel will be the signet ring. He won't wear a signet ring, he will be the signet ring. And again, that's Jesus Christ who is to come. He's talking about everything that can be shaken, we will be shaken. And etc. Get the idea here. Now Pharaoh took off his signet ring from his hand and put it on Joseph's hand. By the way, this is like giving you a bunch of signed checks. You can just write in whatever you want to write in. The king owns it all anyway. And okay, so he puts it on his hand. He put it on Joseph's hand, and then he clothed him in a garment of finest linen. And he put the golden necklace around his neck. In those days, it would be a golden necklace, perhaps with a title on it, some kind of symbol on it of who he is. And he made him ride in his second chariot. Okay? Air Force One and Air Force Two. He rides in Air Force Two because you never know when the Pharaoh wants to go to dinner in France or some place like that. Okay? Literally, it says he charioted him in chariot number 2. And they proclaimed before him, bow the knee. And he set him over all the land of Egypt. Now notice, wherever Joseph goes, he's got forerunners running ahead of him, telling people what you're going to do. When he goes by, you are to be bowed. This is an incredible scene here. Okay? This is hard for us to understand as Americans. We don't bow to popes. We don't bow to emperors and kings. When they come through here, we just think, oh, it's a parade of things. He set him over the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, though I am Pharaoh, yet without your mouth, no one will raise his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Nobody makes a move without him unless they're told. Then Pharaoh named Joseph, you'll like this, Zaphanath-Paneah. And again, scholars have no idea. This is pure ancient Egyptian, and we can take guesses at best. Okay? I read one, I thought, at the end, it won't matter. He's a big boy in town, and that's what we need to know. An Egyptian word here. And he gave him Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera. Now, Asenath, her name means belonging to Neith, Neith. The goddess Neith is the goddess of creation and wisdom and weaving and war. And I saw pictures of her and you can see pictures of her in ancient times. Sometimes she's clothed and sometimes she's got no clothes. Daughter of Potiphera, another title, who was a priest of On, as his wife. And Joseph went forth over the land of Egypt. By the way, you'll notice he's marrying a daughter of a priest. He's marrying nobility. He's a big man, kind of thing. And you'll notice he has no say in the matter. Here's your ring, that represents me. Here's your wife, you're married, etc. Now that he's married, Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And then Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh, and he went through all of the land of Egypt. Now, I wonder if he saw his wife first or did not see his wife first. I have no idea. And during the 7 years of plenty, the land brought forth abundantly. So he gathered all the food of those 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt and placed in that food in the cities, and he placed in every city the food from its own surrounding fields. And Joseph stored up grain in great abundance, like the sand of the sea. That's a lot. Until he stopped measuring it because it was beyond measure. There's just too much to measure. Now you'll notice what's going on here. His whole world has changed, hasn't it? God had every intention of putting him here, not with his cute little robe from Jacob. And when God ran trials through his brothers who made a profit off of him. We're going to kill him. Okay, they sold him. He's accused of rape. He never gets away from that accusation. Next thing you know, he's in prison. Next thing you know, he's ruling the world. So Jesus was sold by his brothers, and he will, next thing you know, he'll be ruling the world. His brothers will be shocked when they come down to Egypt. Remember, and when he reveals himself to them, they actually tell him, one of the brothers is no more. He is actually dead. And they find that their long-lost dead brother is alive, well, and ruling the known world among the Gentiles, which is what Jesus is doing today. Okay? We're going to stop there because we can't get through the rest of the story. But it's incredible, isn't it? You know, when Jesus tells you everything is going to work out well for you, God will make good things come to pass out of your bad things. I believe those words to be very true for all of us. And just like Joseph, he went through a whole lot of bad stuff to get to the good stuff, right? A whole lot of bad stuff. And if I'm like you and you're like me, I hate the bad stuff. I don't like any of it. I hate being hurt. I hate sickness. I hate being falsely accused. I hate all that stuff. We all do. But God means it for good. He's actually going to tell his brothers in the end. He said, when I came to Egypt, he says, you did it and you meant it for evil. Now notice he doesn't tell them, oh, it's okay, I know you didn't really mean it. Yes, you did. You meant it for harm. But God meant it for good. Now notice he gives credit to both how he got there through his brothers and through the hand of God. You were planning harm, but God took that and meant it for good. And both are there. Right? Two sides of the same coin. On one side of the coin is my deeds, and on the other side of the coin is God's deeds. That God is making this thing go wherever the coin he wants those things to go, and making my life go wherever he wants it to go, and bringing good things out of that. We can be confident in that. And the one who loved you before the creation began, my goodness. God's had this all mapped out for your life and for my life, and it may not be pleasant, but it will end pleasantly. Lord, thank you for our time. We worship you. Thank you for Joseph, a type and a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ, who went through a horrible time, and in the end is the Savior of all mankind to keep men alive. As he told his brothers, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, so I could come here and keep men alive. And Jesus has come to keep us alive, and we did great harm to him, but you meant it for good to keep us alive. Thank you for all you've done. We worship you in your name. Amen.